Hello and welcome everyone to the final session. I've really enjoyed engaging with you all in the breakout sessions, and I'm sure like you all, I've really enjoyed listening to all of the speakers. I'm Erin Wilson. I'm the Site Operations Director at HealthLink. It's a community health center in Valparaiso, Indiana, and I've been there for about 12 years. Woo woo. And I have grown from a medical assistant to now leading the clinic. Over a little over 70 people are there. So today in this session, we're going to be talking leading and surviving change. And the main theme today is trust. So you're going to be hearing my story about how utilizing trust and growing trust in different situations can help you lead through change and survive change. Next slide. So it's important I give you a few definitions to start my story. So in my organization, we have two levels for our management teams. So we have the senior team. So this is your C-suite folks, the CEO, COO, CMO, etc. And then the other group, which is called joint leadership. So it's comprised of managers and directors, such as myself, across the organization. And this group oftentimes reports to a senior team member, and you could even categorize us as the middle management. So it was about 3 years ago when this journey started. There was a history of distrust between the joint leadership and the senior team. This distrust had caused communication issues, turnover, and it was a barrier to us really achieving our strategic goals to the best of our ability. Something needed to be done, and most people wanted it to get better. So these two groups of leaders in our organization, we get together quarterly now, but it used to be on a monthly basis. It's mostly communication from the top down. So we decided to survey both groups of leaders, asking them how each felt about the communication between the group, and then trust, how did joint leadership feel about trust within their group, and how did senior team feel about trust within their group, and then how did they feel between each other. So the survey results confirmed what was not necessarily spoken. We needed to act to improve our team's ability to trust each other, specifically between our senior team and our joint leadership. So our CEO had asked for some volunteers, that it would be members of the joint leadership only, and we were going to focus on improving trust between the two groups. She knew it would be key to growing the trust. It could not come down yet again from our senior team. There were about 5 volunteers, including me, and that's how we got started. Next slide. So now, like many of you, I'm sure, have always been, I've been very passionate about what my organization does. I have grown with my organization, but then this group got together and it had an amazing feeling. We shared ideas, we brainstormed, it was really inspiring. We were on a journey somewhere and I was so excited to be a part of it. As we met, we realized that we needed to break down the survey. The survey was key to where we needed to start. So we needed to focus ourselves, to be honest. Start small because the situation wasn't going to change overnight. It didn't happen overnight. So the group of 5 worked with our CEO on different strategies to improve trust between the two groups. So we organized the five of us to become known as the Trust Committee. We worked and created bylaws to ensure we are operating the Trust Committee based on agreed upon set of rules between both senior team and joint leadership. And we appointed a chair, which ended up being myself, yours truly. We also called upon an outside organization, Synerchange. They came and they did trainings on leadership, communication, trust, and difficult conversations. So we went on working to improve the communication, and eventually our monthly meetings, they ended up being organized by the Trust Committee, and they were facilitated by the Trust Committee. We wanted to ensure we were communicating what joint leadership needed to hear from senior team and vice versa. These meetings would host trainings, special guests to educate us, and we had some fun. So as you can imagine, a group that was struggling was ending up learning from each other and laughing. And whenever you have an opportunity to laugh with your team, and I mean like a deep belly laugh, you're bonding and building trust with your team. It's almost a guarantee. So we felt like we were making progress. Next slide. So fast forward when COVID hits, and I know all of you can understand we are facing challenges we never had experienced before, and the situation changed daily. The new procedures, they were coming down from senior team, as they should, to ensure safety of the staff and the patients, and that we were meeting the needs of the clinic. The procedures, though, felt like there was a disconnect between what would work ideally and what would work in the reality of our clinics. Then the stay-at-home order hit, and our corporate headquarters moved to working from home, including our senior team. And obviously the clinics were, the employees of the clinics were still going to work every day. So unfortunately, this somehow was also adding between strain and disconnect between the two groups. So you combine the above and of course the day-to-day stress of COVID, and it was creating this perfect storm between boots on the ground employees and the ones that I manage and the corporate and senior team colleagues. Next slide. So it was like I blinked and the dynamics were changing. Again, it felt like 3 years ago when something needed to be done to bridge this mistrust that was forming. There had been so much effort being put into growing trust prior to this that I knew that there was still a foundation there to stand upon. So there was 2 levels that I considered I could have impact on in growing trust back again. So my role as the team, the leader of my clinic with my employees there, and then also my voice as chair of the trust committee. Next slide. I recognized as we moved through the pandemic how my role at the clinic could drive my team below me to trust more. If I felt disconnected from our senior team, they would. If I showed feelings there's unclear communication, they would as well. I could ignite a way to improve trust through how I handled the change at my clinic. So with each new challenge that came our clinic's way, the leadership at my site, we met constantly. When a needed procedure would roll down, we met with the impacted staff in small groups. It's important to always include those that are impacted directly when you're transitioning through change. We trained the necessary information and then adjusted as needed. So we also wanted to communicate all these new changes out to the overall clinic staff. This, for example, was when we started our drive-through COVID testing. We met and trained with the schedulers on how to schedule, our providers on how to refer the patients over, our testing team on documenting in the overall workflow. And then a communication email went out to the entire staff so that even the dental team that we have knew how we were handling our drive-through testing without being bogged down with the details. So this improved communication with our employees and ultimately our patients. And we decided it was important to have fun throughout the day. So we did silly games. I did bingo over the PA system. You have no idea how much people love bingo. Maybe you do, I'm not sure. Music and dance parties. We did a masquerade ball where people decorated their masks, painted some pumpkins. This was growing trust, and it was the mechanism to survive the constant changes that were coming our way. So we also had a time where we did check-ins with our staff. We called them the "How you doing?" Yep, another Joey from Friends reference. It started with leadership at our site purposely meeting with each of the members of our teams. They, just sit down and say, "How are you doing?" And ultimately, the staff just took it upon themselves to start checking in with each other. They knew what they were going through. They could lean on each other. They could, relate to each other. And as a result, trust continued to grow within the clinic. I felt confident. I feel confident in my peers and my employees and my clinic's ability to navigate this constant change that we're going through. Next slide. So the other area to focus on I knew I could help with was my voice at the trust committee chair. So during the worst of the pandemic, I had this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. I knew there was a disconnect between our corporate staff, our senior leadership, and then the clinic staff, and it felt like it was growing. The organization I had grown with and was passionate about was going in a direction that had made me feel defeated and uninspired, and I felt sad about it. On one hand, I felt like I had this amazing clinic team, and we were doing everything we could every day, and I would push hard for them and my patients. And then on the other hand, I felt isolated from leadership above me and peers at the clinics, other clinics that we have. So there was a trust committee meeting, and our CEO was there, and it was time to have a very open conversation. To be honest, I was a little nervous to have the discussion. I wanted to communicate the issues with transparency and with respect. I had a moment that I thought, all right, who am I to be bringing up these concerns? But at the end of the day, if it's not me, then who's going to be this voice? So this was my time to advocate for me and for everyone at my organization. So we talked about, like we did yesterday, finding your voice. Since there was trust built between me and also my CEO, she knew I was coming from a place of concern. Sometimes the most difficult conversations end up leading us to something very rewarding. So we evaluated where we currently were with the trust between joint leadership and senior team, and worked to create an environment where people felt safe to give feedback. And we focused on a couple things. Support to the clinics. So this looked like behavioral health support sessions about wellness and combating workplace fatigue. The how you doing sessions ended up coming from senior team directors to some of the managers. And then we had our CEO to each of our clinics for open discussions and Q&As. They solicited feedback for the procedures rolling down. We had other management that normally work out of corporate coming and doing rounds at the clinics. And those that were directly impacted with change were now included in the change. For example, we developed a vaccine task force with a wide variety from front desk to MA up to senior team members to assist with decisions that would work for those so that they could help with our vaccine in our communities. And these people then were the people that were actually doing the jobs. They were performing the different duties. So they were impacting what decisions we were making. And then of course we had the employee appreciation and support. So it was boxed lunches from local restaurants, t-shirts, billboards, and thank you cards. And as a result of these efforts, trust continued to grow. Our employee satisfaction surveys last year were higher than ever at the end of the year. More than anything during this time, I was reminded of my why for being at my organization. And I was reminded of the deep love I have for my organization and what we do. Having a trust committee prior to COVID allowed for my organization to really work through this pandemic and our specific challenges. Next slide. So every single person in any position has the opportunity to lead and to make impact through change, all through growing trust. Really seize the moment with a coworker, a manager, or someone you don't even interact with often to build trust, even if it's laughing. Please make it be laughing. All of our organizations were shown in the pandemic that we were more capable of surviving and leading through change. We all developed resiliency. So my wish is that you take away an idea on how to grow trust in your role at your organization. I hope you see that you as a leader, a middle manager, can play a pivotal role in leading and surviving